Okay, folks, I just want to talk to you really quick about creating unity between the background of your image and the foreground. Because watercolor is so wet and loose, it is sometimes nice to start out with the background by just tinting it. Now you notice I have already used my masking fluid to protect and preserve some little white highlight areas that I want to retain the white of my image. So that is an important first step. I am using a very large mop brush, so it's very, very big and can hold a lot of water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my background very, very wet. Now, literally, I could just put this in the sink and run it under some water and just get it really, really sopping wet and drop color on it. I could use a squirt bottle and just squirt it, or I could use my brush. So I'm going to go ahead and just at least start out getting this fairly wet. You can see it's very, very glossy. And what I'm going to do is start dropping in some color. Now, predominantly my color scheme is complementary. Now, yes, this is kind of a magenta, kind of pink, but we know that red and green are complementary colors. And so even though I'm going to be putting some green in my background, don't worry about it interfering with my other color of my flower. Now you can see I'm kind of mixing in, making a little bit of a puddle of kind of a yellowy green. And this is like a wet on wet, right? I'm gonna hold this up so you guys can see it a little bit better. So I'm just dabbing on. You can see it's very, very loose. And the wetter your paper is, the more it's going to want to curl, and that's fine. And if I wanted to, I could kind of just move it back and forth and let it drip a little bit. I think I would like to add a few more colors now that you guys get the basic idea here. I want to warm it up just a little bit. I might even put a little bit of brown in there because it's kind of a brownish red. And all I'm doing is just trying to fill in some of the space of my background so that I'm not necessarily like having to paint all these individual leaves or things like that. It's just kind of the illusion, the implied texture. So I'm still just dabbing away. Ooh, that yellow is a little bit vibrant. That's okay. That's okay. You can have a paper towel nearby or a sponge, and you can kind of stop and lift it a little bit if it's too vibrant for what you're wanting. I can add more water to kind of dilute it. I'm going to go back in and add a few more warm hints. I am adding a little bit of like a brownish orangish red in the background. Okay, so you can see it's kind of puddling at the edges where my paper was highest. So again, you can just kind of tilt it back and forth a little bit and let the paint move back and forth. And as it dries, you can always go back in and make it darker. Or if you see it kind of puddling in certain areas, kind of like a suction. I squeezed out the excess water here, and I just kind of sucking up a little bit of the excess water. Now I could totally just let this dry. I'm going to show you, this is a different color scheme, obviously, but this is one that's dry, and you can kind of see, yeah, I did have some edges that were a little bit harder, that dried funny. But I do have lots of very light pastel, beautiful blends going on here. So it's just a way to kind of unify the foreground and the background. The other thing I could do is I could go back in and make it a little bit darker, because this is very, very light right now. I'm not liking how light it is, so I'm probably going to go back in and add some more color here in a minute. But here's a finished piece from a while ago that I did. You can kind of see the blue salt wash in the background, right? So I could be closely monitoring my background and apply a little bit of a salt wash as well. So you can kind of see that here. I'm going to go back in, get a little bit more vibrant, because I do think I would like to add a salt wash to this, but we already know that a salt wash works the best when it is more of a satin finish. And you can see I'm kind of holding down my paper right now because it's kind of curling. Typically I like to work on a watercolor board. I'll just tape my paper down so it stays a little bit more flat. And I'm mostly focusing on the negative space right now, just because my flower is going to be this area in the middle. So I'm just kind of looking at the negative space here. Okay, so again, you could do a lot of different things. I could just go back in and kind of texture the background, or let it dry completely like this, or watch for the satin finish and sprinkle some salt. But that again is a way to kind of unify the foreground and the background.